thing. I have to say, I mean, we were all in our late 20s, and it was, you know, I guess it was what, 36-day shoot about. It was all sick. It was like 6-day weeks, all nights other than the first week. And so it was like stay up all night, make a horror movie. I'd get upset every time the sun came up because that was like, that's it, wrap. And then sleep all day. And then as we're going out to the forest at night, you know, you're watching all these people come home, you know, from a hard day's work, and we're all pumped up. And then, of course, as they're going off to work in the morning, you know, we're coming back looking like the dead. So, I mean, we just really, really enjoyed the whole thing. I mean, and to this day, and it's going to be 30 years next year. Can't believe that. We're still friends. I mean, everybody, the cast, you know, we have these screenings and people come out and it's like old home week. You know, there wasn't any of the, like, you know, yeah, it was a horrible experience and yeah, we hated each other. I mean, we all kind of like took care of each other out there. And probably the most fun part of the whole thing was, you know, every Sunday, you know, we would wrap at whatever it was, you know, Sunday morning, sleep all day Sunday, and then Sunday night we drive into Atlanta and find some, you know, open disco and then dance all night. And so it's like we never stopped seeing each other. And it was, you know, it wasn't like doing, you know, a horror movie as much as it was just doing a really fun movie. My first film, One Dark Night, was a pretty straight ahead, you know, kind of gothic horror movie. And that was hard to get made because that was the era of the slasher movie. You know, give me a knife, you know, give me some girls, give me a forest, give me a mask, you know, something. And filmmakers were like getting jobs right and left. And I come along going, well, I love the Edgar Allan Poe kinds of films. I grew up with the Hammer films and the Roger Corman films and stuff, you know, ditching school to go see those at noon and at the little theater in Santa Monica. So that was my roots. And growing up watching those on TV, you know, the Universal classics. So I didn't really want to do a slasher movie. I didn't really find it, other than Halloween and the first Friday the 13th, where the killer ends up being the mom. The rest of those things, they weren't as deeply scary to me, you know, and sort of like when torture porn came along, I wasn't a huge fan of that either because I didn't find that psychologically interesting, you know, that got your mind going about the possibilities. I'm much more interested in you know, how it stays with you, how it haunts you. So I wanted to do one of those kinds of movies. So when the Friday was offered to me, it was like, well, two things. I can't take part 6 seriously after all this, so I want to have a little bit of satirizing the whole genre, and also basically take Jason and make him a monster. I mean, literally bring him back from the grave, a la Frankenstein with a lightning bolt. And I set up the opening credits with a kind of a James Bondian opening because, again, I wanted people to say, look, we're having, you know, fun with this. We're taking the tongue, you know, putting it here. And yet, as you're laughing at a certain point, something either shocking or scary, or hopefully you care about these characters, which is another huge objective I had, was I want you to like these people and not want to see them get killed. Because I'd go to theater sometimes and you'd watch these yahoos in the back going, yeah, kill the bitch, yeah, you know, and I went, no, that's not what this should be. It should be like, oh shit, you know, you want to be hiding your face, be afraid of what's going on up there, not like participate in, you know, like guillotine, you know, like it's a festival for death. But there are a lot of fans that love that, and I wasn't sure when mine came out what the reaction was going to be. And part 5, you know, had not really satisfied them. They were very disappointed it wasn't Jason. So the producer said to me, you know, whatever you do, just, you know, the focus has to stay on Jason. And if you want to put humor in it, just don't make fun of him. I said, no, that's the whole thing here, is that we want to have fun with the genre. But Jason is unstoppable, and that's sort of for me, I wanted all the kills to be a little bigger than life, something that you couldn't imitate, you know, starting from Horshack getting his heart punched out, all the way through triple decapitations or heads being twisted. I mean, things that a human could not do. So it kind of elevated, you know, Jason into like super Terminator zombie. And I never thought of it really that way, but after all these years, that's kind of what, you know, I'm being told is, yeah, you're the guy that kind of took him into that next dimension. Well, there's a book, actually, if you would like to buy. Yeah, last year, Joe Madri came out with a book called A Strange Idea of Entertainment, which is literally the line from My Friday, that the caretaker says right to to the lens, which just kind of sums up my life, strange idea of entertainment. My father was a USC film student, so I grew up with a man who really wanted to make movies but never got a chance to, because when you came out of film school, 1949, it's like, film school? No, kid, out. So I basically inherited his camera and his dreams, and he bought a house next to the old MGM backlots in Culver City. So on the weekends with my friends, we would make movies in the backlot. So I had this, incredible fantasy as a kid to be able to like make movies in the sets where, great films were shot at MGM. And of course they weren't particularly great films. We didn't really know what we were doing. We would shoot, sometimes on 16, which we couldn't afford, and 8mm, you had to send it off to someplace, and sometimes you got your film back, sometimes you didn't. And so I have a lot of half works that were done between those ages of 7 and 12. But that was kind of the beginning of wanting to be a filmmaker. And my father was also a magician and a fire eater. So I learned his magic tricks, and I would do a magic act to pay for the films that I was making. So, that pretty much was, as far as I was concerned, me kind of picking up what my father did and wanted to do and carrying on. Then the Beatles hit, and I sat there in front of the TV like every other boy going, I want girls to scream at me like that, So much for the magic, so much for the filmmaking. I became a rock and roller, and my hair was like the thing that became the badge of rebellion. Got kicked out of 7 high schools, all because of my hair. In LA, the girls' skirts had to be 3 inches below your knee, and the boys' hair couldn't touch your ear. So it was, it's like, hey, I'm in a band. This is how I get my living and things, and no, they weren't hearing that. So my parents wanted to shoot me, but I did this for a number of years, and as a lead singer of a band called the Sloss and the Maywines and TNT and the Fury, and we opened for Love, Iron Butterfly, Doors, Pink Floyd, Seeds, all this sort of iconic mid-60s group. I went to the Monterey Pop Festival, and if you watch the documentary Monterey Pop, you will see my chubby little 15-year-old face like, seeing Hendrix for the first time, Otis Redding, The Who, and I swear when I watch it, I can see my brain being fried and going, that's it, that's what I want to do. So that was the dream up until 19, where I thought, if I'm going to be a physical performer, I want to learn something more about not just dance and things like Jagger and James Brown. I became interested in the idea of mime. So at 19, I left my girlfriend, left home, went to Paris, didn't speak French, threw myself into the starving artist in Paris routine, and learned mime and commedia dell'arte and dancing and fencing and acrobatics and all this stuff. Came back to find my girlfriend had left me, had no money, so I started as a street performer, with the hat down, and whatever I made in the hat is, how I ate that night. And that led to me just becoming this street performer and put together little, shows in mime and stuff. And then I got a call from somebody saying, Woody Allen would like to meet you. I said, okay, and I thought Woody was a god. And at that time, he'd only done Bananas and Take the Money and Run, and he was doing this movie Sleeper. And he wanted somebody who was a mime that could come in and work with him in the robot sequence, if you remember that, with the masks and stuff. So me and all my friends, basically, who were mimes, were all the robots in Sleeper. I got to work with Woody on, what our moves were going to be and how he did it sort of staccato in that. And that kind of gave me a reputation of the guy that you hired to bring into movies to either choreograph things like on the Black Hole, the robots, the humanoids, all that stuff, or I was the Jabberwocky in Alice in Wonderland. I was the mutated bear in John Frankenheimer's Prophecy. Robots, monsters, and anything that required any kind of physical stuff. Meanwhile, I was writing scripts and deciding that I really wanted to be a filmmaker. And eventually, as I've already mentioned, One Dark Night, we did that for $800,000, and that was sort of the calling card, which then led to Friday the 13th and Stephen King. Sometimes they come back and Date with an Angel and stuff, so that all the mime trainings became much more of a visual cinema too, that, you know, because I got very obsessed with the idea of what D.W. Griffith once said, that cinema was our first universal language, that anybody in any country, any age, limited title cards, because the best silent movies had very few title cards, could understand the story. You know, language was not an issue. You just watched and the story happened in your head, which was what I feel good cinema does. And so those two influences kind of allowed me to, even when I did TV movies, try to tell the story as visually as possible. And now, after all these years, I get a call from a guy who was in my very first band and said, the song that we had done that nobody wanted because the title was too risque at the time, Making Love, was selling on eBay for $6,650 a copy. I said, how the hell did that happen? And it's like, well, somebody picked it up and didn't know who owned it and put it on a compilation in the 80s of all these like garage band things. And it took off. And particularly in Europe, it became sort of this cult song. And we did a bunch of interviews with whoever was still survived, you know, the drug period of the 60s. And we said, for the hell of it, let's get together and start to play. Now, I had not sung or done anything in 46 years. You know, everything was behind the camera and, you know, 40 movies. And I was, as far as I was concerned, I was just happy being a filmmaker. And now I'm being asked to go back out and do something I had not done in so long. But it just clicked. And we've done over 100 something shows now, sent us to Spain. We did South by Southwest like this year. We're going to do it again next year, and made our first album. And now I stand on stage, you know, and say, look, it took me 50 years to make this album. Do not give up your dreams. Whatever it is, hold on to them, because you never know when they're going to happen. And getting to get out there and do what I love, you know, and what I wanted to do from, you know, my early teenage years has been a real blessing. So the filmmaking hasn't gone away. It's just I keep sort of kind of reinventing, you know, the creative process.
Now it's so wonderful.
The Jabberwocky would definitely win. He would blow him into flames, and that would be the end of it. Yeah, because and plus the bear didn't, you know, move very fast, and I could move much faster as the Jabberwocky. Actually, in both costumes, I got set fire to, which was fun. Because the bear, John Frankenheimer, wanted me to, you know, kick through a campfire, you know, that was going, and of course nobody thought about the suit wasn't fireproofed. So, you know, I kicked through this thing, and, you know, and I just start, you know, smelling something that's like, you know, somebody want to put out the bear, you know. And of course I'm powerless to do anything inside of that suit. And the same thing with the Jabberwocky. I'm chasing little Alice down this corridor where they had real torches, and I had these big wings. And, you know, and they yelled cut, and I kind of turned to look, and the wing went right into you know, one of the flames. And it was the same thing. Somebody want to put the Jabberwocky out? You know, that's all you hear is this, and you're, again, it's like you smell the smoke. There's nothing you can do. It's just, I'm going to, like, you know, burn in rubber, hot rubber, you know, if somebody doesn't put this thing out. And then out comes the, you know, the fire extinguisher, and, you know. But I think, yeah, again, if you paired those two off, you know, game on. You know, I think Jabberwocky would be just like Indiana Jones with pulling out the gun, bang, you know, the fire goes, that's it, bear's gone. True artist. I mean, in all the great ways that an artist is defined. You know, part child, part arrogant, part genius. Just, you know, I was one of those students, and I still believe this to this day, that if you love something, you glom on to whoever is the source and you stay with them. And I was constantly asking him questions, showing him things that I thought would be interesting. And as a result, he would invite me to come to, you know, his shows, like in the Providences of France. And he put a chair in the wings so I could just sit there and watch, you know, from a side angle. And he'd come off, you know, as he'd come off stage, he'd go, "Did you like?" "Yes, yes, yeah." You know, and I'm this kid, and it was amazing to, you know, have that kind of mentorship, you know. And so he, you know, it wasn't like that I wanted to do the kind of mime that he did. I was much more American, and I mean, my routines were on smoking weed and trying to take a pee in an airplane, you know, bathroom, you know, in turbulence. And so, I mean, you know, my stuff went off into my own little bizarre world. But the influence of the art itself and training your body and learning how to do things with your hands and as an instrument was absolutely incredible. And years later, he came and saw. I had a mime group called the LA Mime Company, and he came and saw us, and he was like a father. He would look so proud, and so happy that he had something to do with that. So, yeah, I was over in Paris directing a play a few years back, and that's when he died. And that was like so weird because I had not been to Paris before that, or since I was a student there, and to kind of be there then for his funeral was just strange coincidence. But yeah, he was amazing. I mean, he was the great mentor in Frank Capra, which a lot of people go, you? I mean, with the kind of movies you made? I go, yeah, Capra. If I had a choice of making films, I would love to make It's another way of making It's a Wonderful Life, something that encourages the human condition of taking care of one another and no man's a failure as friends and all the things that Capra put in about, one person can make a difference. My life is sort of, been formed off of that. And my movies is what I wanted to do. And Capra saw my Date with an Angel and gave us a quote for the movie and things. So that really meant a lot. And so those two guys had such a huge, influence on me. And even in the movies, like I was saying earlier about Friday the 13th, I wanted you to care about the people, because the one thing I learned from Capra is it's a person-to-person medium. If you like the people up there, you will like the story. You will be, engaged. And that was a huge rule that I try never to break. I think as many experiences, I always tell people, get in the trenches, get down in there. I'm teaching, I'm a film, professor. How the hell that happened, I have no idea, but I'm teaching film at Chapman University, Dodge College in Orange County. And I mean, there's some brilliant young filmmakers there that I am, I'm trying to give them a sense of, you have such an amazing amount of tools now, that it's like anybody can make a film on your phone and have it look good. I saw Tangerine. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet, but it's a filmmaker did it on the iPhone and put a wide angle lens on it. And it's basically a movie about transsexuals and a relationship on Santa Monica Boulevard, shot, with real people that come in and out. I don't know how they got the rights or how they did this, but I sat there going, this is exciting because, I'm caught up in a subject that I probably wouldn't have sought out on my own. I went to see it because it was being shot on an iPhone, but it was very, involving and very, groundbreaking beyond just, how it was shot. Is that, it was kind of insight into this world, and you cared about the characters, and they used a lot of real people that were just flamboyant characters. And I keep saying this to the students. It's like you have access to so much great stuff that you can tell a story simply. And I can't remember who it was, either Coppola or Scorsese said, that until we can get it. I think it was Coppola said, until we can get it down to like a pencil and a paper. Because not everybody's an artist, but everybody can own a pencil and paper. And we're getting to that point now, so that, it's going to be the people who are truly creative that can take these simple things and make art out of them. All this great stuff with the franchise movies and stuff is, personally, I fall asleep. It's so much overwhelm, I shut down. But when things are, small and intimate, and obviously the foreign films and the independent films are always the things I find myself most drawn to, because they give me some insight into human condition. And, this is the greatest special effect in the world, is the face and the emotion that comes through. And when you get an actor that can do that, or a real person that you're photographing in a documentary, I mean, it's absolutely hypnotic. And so, I mean, this is where I try to, again, tell the students, this is where you've got to go with this. So to answer your question, yeah, the more things you know about human behavior, the more times you spend with people, not just watching other people's movies, but life, hooking up, trying things, understanding what it's like to be on a set and hold a boom, so you understand each person's job and can appreciate what they're bringing to it. And I'm a huge believer in this is our film, not my film, our film. And if everybody feels that, as we did on my Friday the 13th, it was a real group effort, you know. And yeah, there's got to be somebody who's sort of the leader and saying yes and no, because everybody wants, you know, have an answer. And you put 80 people together, and it's like you get 80 answers, but somebody's got to be the one in charge. But ultimately, if you really respect, and because you know what that goes into that person's job, it really, really helps. In genres, I kept jumping genres, particularly in TV movies. I would do a thriller, then I'd do a romantic comedy, then I'd do a Christmas movie, I'd do this. And that I found in retrospect, as much as I wanted to be like Howard Hawks and these guys that I admired and try all these different genres, they couldn't put me in a box. And as a result, it was very hard to know how to hire him. You know, how do we hire this guy? I mean, is he, does he do comedy? I just didn't want to be in a box, just creatively. I wanted to try different things and research different things. You know, I did a movie on the DC snipers 6 months after it happened. So I'm talking to people that had FBI gag orders who were telling me things about Mohammed and Malvo. And, you know, but it required me to make it feel like I wasn't going to, you know, blow their cover or whatever. I just wanted the true story. I wanted to understand, did these guys really do it? Because they hadn't been tried yet. And how? You know, how do you shoot from out of a trunk, you know, over 8 lanes of traffic? Well, came to find out through a cop that they had walkie-talkies. So Mohammed would, you know, watch the traffic and then tell the kid when to fire, when it was clear. Because, you know, and things like that, it's like, no one knew that. So it was always, every subject gave me a chance to kind of go in and research it and understand it and talk to people on death row who were murderers and talk to, you know, mentally challenged people when I'm doing a piece that required that, so that I understood the way they thought and moved and things. I mean, all these things just bring a wealth of knowledge and also love, you know, for humanity. I mean, it's just, it's like you can't hate something that you get to know, you know. It's always the problem in relationships is, I don't get her, I don't get him, I don't, you know, it's like, well, take the time to try to understand it. It's a lot easier to love somebody. Well, it's funny, just the other day somebody asked me about Tim Matheson, you know, what was it like to work with him, because sometimes they come back with him, and I said, there's only one other person that's in the same category, which is Dick Van Dyke, which is, you just adore this person. I mean, Tim have one of those hearts, and Dick the same way. I had a group called the LA Mime Company, and I was writing and directing the sketches for that, and we were playing at the Las Palmas Theater in Hollywood, and Dick actually came and saw us. And he had just gotten a pickup at NBC for a variety series. This was 1975, I guess. And he said, I would love to have your group be, you know, on the ensemble on the show, and just consider me the 6th member of the LA Mime Company. And of course we laughed, yeah, Dick Van Dyke, 6th member. But he was serious. And he would come in and he would like, he admired us as much as we had admired him. And it wasn't fake. I mean, he had that genuine love and appreciation. He just loves physical comedy and dancing and just being very, very open. You know, that being said, he also had this other side of him that, you know, he revealed to us about, you know, his alcoholic years, and how, you know, when he was at the height of his fame doing the Dick Van Dyke TV series, he'd go home every night and drink an entire bottle of gin and pass out, wake up the next morning and go. There was so much of this insecurity in there that he fought against, and no one ever saw that side of him. So when he became, you know, AA, he was like very, very hardcore and cleaned up. And he just turned 90, 91 so recently, and he's still dancing. He's still, you know, most incredible human being. I mean, and to be able to write something and give it, you know, show it to him, because when I wrote pantomimes, I'd always sort of act them out. Then to see him play it back and go, oh my God, that's so much better than, you know, even what I was thinking. And then every guest star that was on that show, you know, Lucille Ball, Sid Caesar, Freddie Prinze, Chevy Chase, Flip Wilson, Tommy Smothers. I mean, to be able to, you know, I guess I was, 26 at the time, and to be able to write and direct these legends, you know, was incredible. And then we got an Emmy nomination for the writing on the show. We lost, because first year Saturday Night Live, so we lost to Saturday Night Live, who had, you know, 3 things to us and Carol Burnett show, because that was kind of the end of the variety shows in the mid-70s there. But the whole experience, and Andy Kaufman, you know, was introduced on that show too. So to hang around Andy and to hear him talk about what he wanted to do in his career, and that he had this whole idea of having the most despicable comedian ever, Tony Clifton, and to be, kind of there in the parking lot when he's first talking about that. I mean, it was just incredible time, to sort of be part of all the stuff that was just about to explode, into what comedy is now with Saturday Night Live, or what Andy was doing in terms of, is this real comedy or is this, it was an incredible period. But bottom line, just to have been on that series and to be with all those greats, and Dick in particular, is, one of the real blessings of my life. I went from doing these horror movies and all this other stuff to suddenly I began to become the go-to Lifetime television for women director. And talk about not planning on a career down that road. But I found out two things. One, I loved women movies because there was a chance to emotionally go places that most of the kind of the macho things, that you end up doing with, guy with action or, heavy plot and stuff. It got to be very intimate, and I got a chance to also do a lot of teenage movies at a time when I had teenagers. So to be able to work with Marcia Gay Harden on a movie that ultimately was a movie about oral sex with a horrible title, Teen Sex, which eventually became, what do they end up calling it? She's Too Young. And but to explore all the avenues of when kids are first trying out things, breaking away from their parents, breaking away from, what the school was telling them. There's that rebellious side of me, but there's also the heart of, when you suddenly are out there on your own, making your own choices, right, wrong, falling in love for the first time, falling out of love, having your heart broken, betrayal of best friends, all that stuff we got to do in those movies. And there was times where I try to get away from the monitor and stay, as close to the actors as possible. But to see these actors, have these moments where they just hit these raw nerves inside of them. I mean, many times it brought me to tears. I mean, Valerie Bertinelli, I did 3 movies with. There were some things that I never expected. Somebody who was basically a sitcom actress to have such a deep, soul to go into and pull things from, as she did. Jean Smart, I did a movie called The Yarn Princess. That was actually not a Lifetime movie, it was an ABC movie, but she played a mentally disabled woman trying to raise 7 boys. And some of her scenes just brought me to tears, watching this woman, again, channel a mentally disabled woman and bring all that to these scenes where you go, you're really rooting for the character and it's not the actor. So there's been, a number of times where things like that, it's like, I know where the scene's going, but it's still, you get caught up, in their energy and their devotion, to the part. So the Lifetime movies were particularly amazing in that way, that I got to tackle, sex and breakups and cyberbullying and a lot of things that were just kind of starting, out as new monsters. And I always talk about the fact I started in my career, doing doing movie monsters. Jason, I did an episode of Freddy's Nightmares. I did Freddy Krueger, Stephen King. The only one I hadn't done was Michael Myers. And then I move into television and I'm doing AIDS, global warming, serial killers, mental illness, racism. I mean, just the real monsters of life. And those are far more scary, because you talk to somebody and you have no idea that they're a total sociopath until later, and you realize, oh my God, they seem so nice, so normal. And it's like, yeah, and guess what? You can murder people and still sleep well at night. And that was a huge discovery for me, because I always thought, oh, these people, they've got to be tortured at night. It's like, nope, they sleep fine, because that part of the brain just, shuts it off. And they can justify murder in a way that, no, they had it coming. That was my job to get rid of them. And those monsters to me are, far more frightening than a guy behind a hockey mask. Wow. Favorite movie monster of all time? Well, I guess I have to say Jason. You know, what else am I going to say, right? Yeah, I mean, at the time when we were making these things, I have to say, I mean, we all thought we were kind of slumming, you know, that Freddy and Jason and the Hellraiser, Pinhead and Michael Myers were nothing compared to Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy. You know, those are the real legendary monsters. Those are the ones that are going to be forever. But what we did not, none of us knew, was obviously beta, VHS, DVD, streaming. Every year, a new generation, you know, discovers these things, and the fact that you can go back and see the old ones so easily now, where we couldn't when we were, obviously we'd see them, you know, once every year they'd come out on something you would see, and you waited for when Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, where you could see them all together in one movie. But it became this thing of like, you know, well, we're going to do these, but they're going to be forgotten about. And it's been a shock to all of us who've been involved that they're so beloved. And, you know, there was jokes about, you know, there was, you know, Count Chocula, you know, cereal and Frankenberry and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, one day there's going to be Jason Berry. And it's like, yeah, probably so. You know, it's like they've become friends. They've become the monsters that you come to love. And easily imitatable. I mean, everybody can get a hockey mask and things. And the fans that I have now from this, I never in a million years thought. I mean, people like, your movie changed my life. It's like, how? I don't get it. It's like, well, I lost my dad and my grandmother would take me to the movies and I saw that, and it's like, and you related to it? It's like, there was something that just made me feel, I don't know, and I, you know, psychologically, it's like this. I guess it's that thing of Jason has kind of a control, you know, and I think, and he's faceless, so he can be anybody, and there's a lot of that kind of, I think, boys got involved with, and then my shock, you know, it's a whole generation of girls who love horror movies, where before it was like, oh no, it's a boy thing. Now it's completely crossover, and you know, I have a lot of students who are game guys who, again, huge genre fans. I mean, they know more about the slasher genre than all of us who lived it, you know, and they want to make, you know, movies, you know, that have their sensibilities and stuff. And it's amazing how this stuff just kind of keeps changing and evolving. And where it's all going, I have no idea. But I think ultimately why the 80s are so loved is that there are like identifiable monsters, imitatable monsters, where we kind of lost that for a lot of years. And I'm hoping somebody starts. I mean, I have a horror movie that I want to make that, you know, is basically a new kind of a franchise with something, again, that's based on something real, but is, you know, almost like Exorcist in that it deals with religion and things. So it does, you know, have a much deeper resonance to it. And I'm, you know, that's before I leave this planet in 2050, I'm hoping, or beyond. And I have a crypt, so ready to go. So I'm set. You know, I can always look there and say, okay, there it is, 2050 beyond will happen in there. But before that time, you know, they want to make some more films. I'd love to remake my first movie, One Dark Night, because I know a lot more than I did then. And so it's always looking for that challenge. And in the horror world or in the filmmaking world, you know, it's like, what do the audiences want now? I mean, what's the next level we can take them to? Something that you have to experience as a group, you know, as opposed to just, you know, at home in front of the TV. And when I saw Oculus Rift, you know, virtual reality, that blew me away, and all the possibilities that you can do, you know, with horror stories and stuff, basically one person narrative. Constantly telling the students the same thing. Figure out how to do, you have to redefine cinema with that. You can't, close-ups are gone. You know, cuts are gone. It's all got to be almost continuous like a game, but there's a way to do that. You know, when Griffith did Birth of a Nation, it's like, wait a minute, you can't cut off an actor. You're supposed to see head to toe, you know, because that was the rule, like stage. We're going to have to adjust in cinema, you know, to these new innovations, and hopefully the bright, you know, young filmmakers will come up with some way to say, you know, we're redefining entertainment.